Lesson 31, reading and writing decimal numbers. All right, so this is also page 221 for your reference. Let's talk about reading and writing decimal numbers. The number 3/10. 3/10 is a fraction, correct? Yes. So on our fraction, we have something called the numerator and something called the denominator, right? Review. That means we also can indicate a fraction by drawing it as well. I always end up doing that because I don't check to see where I'm going. So just to double check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 3 parts of a whole. So my whole box that I just drew indicates my whole thing. I divided it up into 10 parts. My box is now cut into 10 parts, so think of a dresser with 10 drawers. And 3 of those drawers are open. That's my numerator. My numerator is the number of parts selected, 3 drawers. My denominator is how many drawers that equal the whole deal, which happens to be 10. What that means is, as of course this is review, now let's hit something new, something called decimal fractions. A decimal fraction is indicated by being able to see the denominator, see the numerator, correct myself, but not the denominator. But there's a different way that we could see it. All right, so here's my example. 3/10 is my fraction. Let's write that as a decimal. I write it as a decimal pretty simply because the 3 is in the tenths place. So they are equivalent things. They're just about the exact same thing. Another fraction, 3/100ths, is also like writing this. Because the 3 is in the hundredths place, I can indicate it that way. Or 21/100ths is indicated by, oops, 1 too many zeros. It's indicated by the 1 being in the hundredths place, so I can read the number as 21/100ths. So those are equivalent things. The fraction 12 and 345 thousandths is read that way because the 5 is in the thousandths place. And what you need to see that this whole thing is called a decimal number. Sometimes it's just called a decimal, but for our purposes, we'll keep calling it a decimal number. So it's indicated by our decimal point. It's also indicated by our decimal fraction, which is right there. So that means when we're doing assignments or doing anything, you can write 7/10 now 2 different ways. You could write it as a fraction, like you've been learning, or you could write it as a decimal, like that, because the 7 is in the tenths place. Just as simple as that. This is like looking at a grid with 100 squares in it and part of them shaded. So if you had a grid with 100 squares and you had 23 shaded, then you got 23 out of 100, or 23/100ths. So what that means is, look at page 223, is a chart. And that chart is pretty useful. That chart really means is you have, let's set it up. We've been doing a lot with this stuff here. Let's see if your parents can see if you're crazy. Read these with me. Okay, let's start way over here where we got millions. And then over here you have 100, say it with me, thousands. And then you have 10 thousandths and thousandths. And then over here we have hundreds, tens, and ones. Okay, so we did a lot with that. And we've also done our decimals and fractions as well, but let's talk about these. Now, after our decimal point, which is right there, after our decimal point, we have something, we have to name these another way. So we'll name these tenths. Okay, so if you, is basically dividing things up into 10 pieces. Hundredths, sorry. When you have to make sure you say that TH, give it a little bit of a lisp, so you sound like that guy on Princess Bride. Thousandths. And then 10 thousandths. Hundred thousandths. And then millions. So we've gone on both sides of the perspective here. 1/10, 100, 1,000, 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths, and then 1 millionth. 1 millionth. It's kind of hard to say. So we've done, now we've got a chart that's indicated, and that chart is going to be super handy for you to do. So make sure you pause this, take a minute to write this down, and then we will move on from there. All right, so now I've got a long decimal number, and we can read this number as 12, and now let's take a look at this. This is 34,579, but where is that 9? That 9 is 5 places over from my decimals. That's 100 thousandths. So 12 and 34,579 hundred thousandths. So kind of a big number. But what place is the 5? Well, the 5 is in the thousandths place, because we go tenths, hundreds, thousandths. And we can indicate those things. What is the 7? The 7 is then, let's do a different color so I don't don't confuse you. The 7 is in the 10 thousandths place. All right, so pretty easy. So let's do a few more. Let's read this number and let's actually write it down. What is this number called? This number is called 123, and because I'm running out of room, I'm going to move down. 100 23 thousandths. And it's pretty simple for you to do. Okay, so we just look at it. 123 decimals and 123 thousandths, and we have everything indicated. So I could do all kinds of stuff with this. You can do as well is 75 thousandths, 75 thousandths. Okay, got my number written down, 75 thousandths. And I also have 100 and 11 hundredths. Using both of those together, or not both of those together, let's try to indicate where these are gonna roll. So let's do 75 thousandths first. Let's mark these A and B. So let's do A first. Well, they're both decimal numbers, at least they're both decimal numbers, but the first one is just decimals, a decimal fraction. And I'm gonna write out 3 blanks because it's in the thousandths place. So I make sure I get everything lined up. So my 5 has to end up in my thousandths place. Now for B, my number is 100 and, so let's write 100 and then a decimal point, and then let's write 11 hundredths. Well, 11 hundredths means only 2 decimal places, so my 11 just ends up on the second decimal place, and I am done. Now, before tomorrow, what I would like you to do then is to do the practice set, starting on page 224, and going on to page 225, give A through J a shot. A through J a shot. Give them a practice, and we'll go over it tomorrow in class. Okay, give A through J a shot, and then you'll be all set and ready to go. Have a good day.